This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We're spending the hour with Ronnie Kasrils in Johannesburg, South Africa. President Nelson Mandela lies in state in Pretoria at the Union Buildings. Thousands upon thousands are waiting hour after hour to be able to pass by his open casket. That will go on until Friday, and then the funeral, the state funeral for Nelson Mandela, is this weekend, along with his burial in Kunu, where he was born. Ronnie Kasrils, leading anti-apartheid activist, met Nelson Mandela in 1962 in the underground. Ronnie Kasrils remained in the underground for a quarter of a century until 1989. He served on the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress for 20 years, went on to be a top military official under President Nelson Mandela, and then on to intelligence minister under President Thabo Mbeki. Juan?
Well, Ronnie Kasrils, yes, we had Amy had asked you a question before the break, but we'd like to, if you can answer that quickly. But in the few minutes that we have left, we also are very interested in your assessment of what has happened in South Africa since the end of apartheid, because you have been highly critical of what the revolution did not accomplish, and you talked in an article in the Guardian earlier this year about the Faustian bargain that you believe that the ANC, that you and the other leaders of the ANC engaged in with the leaders of not only South African capital but the world capitalists and governments who were putting pressure on you at the time of the transition to a majority rule. So I'm wondering if you could answer briefly this issue of whether Nelson Mandela was a leader of the Communist Party of South Africa, but also spend most of the time talking about your assessment of the problems that still remain to be solved in South African society.
Sure. Well, let me just deal with Amy's point. Sure, Communist Party suddenly makes that claim a week or so ago. I was in the party from 1961. I was in the leadership at a very high level in the Central Committee for many years, very close to Slovo and Mabida and others. None of them ever made that claim or statement that he had been a member, other than that he had been close and that there'd been some educational lessons in Marxism. Now, maybe he had been. It's possible, but there's no documents to actually prove that conclusively. So for me, and it's not a question of wanting to cover up or be embarrassed whatsoever, it's that Mandela never acknowledged it, and because there's no real conclusive proof, I think it's got to rest in a sense there, because it doesn't really do very much. The fact is that if Mandela had a Marxist orientation, which he certainly did, I would say, for some time, that was dispelled when he emerges from prison 30 years or so later, where he immediately, in a major, his first address to our people, he commits himself to the socialist inclined Freedom Charter, and the clause that is quite emphatic, although it doesn't use the word nationalization, but says that what we committed to is the control of the heights of the economy, the mines, the banks, the monopoly industry, and it's inconceivable that that will change. Right. 2 years later, he shows a totally different view on the economy by going to Davos, 1992, July, very impressed, clearly, as he was in South Africa, by the voice of monopoly capital. I'm not saying he bows down to it, but he is certainly impressed in terms of what they're able to do, and comes back from Davos and says that for growth of the economy, we've got to look to the private sector. And he says that it's clear that if we go for radical socialist approach, he uses the term nationalization, we're not going to get the foreign investment from the capitalist world that we need to to make the country run and to overcome our poverty. So it's a total change. And this is where I say our Faustian pact or bargain stems from. It stems not just from Mandela, who is making this announcement and is following this through, but Joe Slovo, Ronnie Kasrils, the left wing of the ANC, which was predominant, our whole Communist Party. There's no real debate or argument about this. Mandela really is the icon, which he shouldn't have been, for his fellow revolutionaries. He's a leader amongst other leaders. He's always about a collective, but Mandela is very firm on a course of approach once he's made up his mind. And I note that people like Joe and others actually go along with him. Now, the reason being that the political kingdom is coming close. And of course, this is a very big issue. We could have had a civil war at the time. There could have been enormous bloodshed. There was tremendous threats from the third force, the police, the soldiers operating undercover, and with all sorts of right-wing elements from the Afrikaner extremists. And we were very concerned. Would we be able to move through that situation smoothly and get to a democratic election and form a government based on the people's will? Now, that's an enormous attraction. And that's where Mandela's greatness shows. But I would say at the same time, we push the economic issues onto that back burner, and they successively become distant. So that nationalization, command of the hearts of the economy, this becomes a no-no. And once that sets in, and you get the gates open for a nouvelle comprador bourgeoisie to come to the fore, junior partners of big capital and the corporates and the international connections, then we embrace the neoliberal economy of the world today, with all its corruption, with its cronyism, as it's
Ronnie Kasrils, we just have about 30 seconds left.
And you in the and then you're in the clutches of what we all in the clutches of, the 1%. The corporate world that runs the economy of this planet of ours and is doing so much harm to it, and begins to undermine the political sovereignty and independence of nations. That's the point we're at. That's why we're facing such scandals and corruption with our political elite.
Ronnie Kasrils, we have to leave it there. We thank you for being with us, joining us from Johannesburg, South Africa, former member of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress, worked with Nelson Mandela. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily independent global grassroots news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org today. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.